the level of control, level of shareholding. And in the final one, you are looking at the data that Dr. Steve Mantia was talking about, the biodata, the passport, date of birth, residential address. We agreed that it was very necessary for these 3 levels of information to be segregated so that the first level is available to the public. However, the final level of information is only available to competent authorities and the law enforcement agencies. So not anybody can just go and access any type of information. We also talked about the issue of cost, and we agreed that in order for the Registrar General's Department, now the ORC, to be able to maintain its systems, we are informed that there needs to be a system upgrade, and just that alone for a year will cost about $600,000 US. How is the RGD or ORC able to maintain their systems, and the need for IGF to be able to conduct their operations and implement their work very well? We also talked about the issue of the threshold and the fact that the National Risk Assessment did indeed, feed into the development of the law, and we're able to discuss the thresholds that ensued from there, talking about the high-risk companies of 5%, the low risk of 20%, and the fact that politically exposed persons, both international and local, needed to be given some kind of threshold. But we agreed that the 0% threshold for local PEPs was very much warranted. In terms of the system readiness, we discussed the fact that, there needed to be not just capacity building for the RGD to understand what beneficial ownership, transparency or disclosure is, but to also enable them to understand how that impacted their work and their relations with the other law enforcement agencies like IOCO, the FIC, the Ghana Police, the GRA, and all of that. And we also talked about, the fact that the BO information and how it's linked to RTI. RTI is talking about making information publicly available. And how do we juxtapose that to the beneficial ownership information that people are demanding for within the Registrar General's Department? We also talked about data protection and confidentiality. The fact that, as Nana from the Chamber of Commerce said, people are a bit skeptical about why the information is being collected. But we discussed and agreed that once you are a commercial entity or you are engaging in some type of commercial, business in this country, you cannot hide. The information has to be provided. But who has access to that information? And the levels of access is what has to be agreed upon. And I think Mrs. Owari and her team have done a very good job segregating that information. On the way forward, we all applauded the ORC and the staff for the work that they've done so far. But we did agree that there were some things that needed to be looked at. The development of the regulations to accompany the implementation of the Act, internal procedures and manuals and guidance notes as well also need to be developed. And we are happy that we have this program here today that kind of brings everything together and allows us to hear from you what needs to be in there and what needs to be highlighted. One thing that also came up was the idea of the Registrar General being able to prevent or restrict the registration of companies where there is a suspicion of fraudulent information being provided. So, for example, the company or the individual provides all the necessary information, but as an RGD or an ORC staff, looking at the data, it's quite obvious that it's not credible information that is provided. Does the RGD or ORC have the right or the legal mandate to restrict the registration of such a company so that it becomes a preventative measure and not just when you now have to flag to the... We also talked about the issue of cost and whether or not, this cost can be waived for civil society organizations. So Mrs. Owari very kindly mentioned that we can, to some extent, provide some kind of bulk information for banks or other entities that require huge amounts of BO information. So, for example, for civil society organizations or investigative journalists like Fred and his team, we can, as an ad hoc basis, once they request for the information, there is not the need to pay the additional 25 cedis or whatever amount of money needed to be paid. That can be done freely of charge. finally, I'll just end with the need for education and sensitization. We heard a lot from our members of our group that BO is being, the message out there is that we will arrest you, we will catch you, you are doing something wrong. And that in itself makes people defensive. So is it possible to reimagine how we message BO beyond just the idea of corruption, but to promote either business integrity, to promote, sanitizing our environment, promoting value for money for contracts that have been done, so that the smaller businesses who are not really engaging at the formal sector, they're able to be brought on board and they are also able to appreciate the work that is being done. I'll end here, and maybe if there are any questions, we'll hear from you.
Thank you very much, Madam Rushaya. We move to group 2. They discussed BO systems development and implementation. Please introduce yourself and go ahead. Let's try and stick with the 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Priscilla Bosegan. I represent Group 2. So, per our discussion, we talked about the BO register, which is contained in the central register. And luckily, the register is electronic. So, even though unfortunately you cannot access it online, when you bring in a search, we are able to respond to the search and then give you any BO information that you sought for. And also, we looked at the system of collecting the BO information. We looked at the various forms. We have the BO1 form, which is a declaration form, where you indicate the various BOs in the entity. We looked at the BO2 form, which is for the individuals, the BO3 form, which is used by the publicly listed companies, and then the BO4 forms, which is for the government-owned organizations. We also looked at some best practices and compared it to our system or our way of collecting BO information. And we realized that we are almost in line with them. So for instance, we are able to collect the BO information online. So when you are registering a new company, you add your BO information at that stage. For the rest of the stages, especially when it comes to amendments or filings, unfortunately now you have to work in to file that information, but then the system, our software systems are being upgraded so that you can also, within a short while, sit in the comfort of your homes and then file those information also online. Also, we realized that we have the structured, the uniform structure which other countries are using, so that information sharing can be done easily and it can also be understood. And then we also realized that ORC, we are able to generate the BO information in different formats. So currently we can generate our information in the PDF and the CSV format. Also, the BO information is easily accessible, although you pay a little fee to access it, but then it's easily accessible and it can be done in-house at the moment. We also compared, we talked about the best practice of whether the information is machine readable, which we also realized that it's readable at ORC, is implemented there as well. The information submitted to ORC is also up to date in the instance that when you submit your BO information and it is approved, any search done on the company right after the approval comes with the BO information updated in there. Also, the system of verifying or authenticating the information brought to us, at the moment we rely on the TIN, but there's also a way of verifying with the NIA cards. We have a link that you can key in the Ghana card submitted by someone to ascertain whether it's indeed that person, that BO is the one who has been named therein. we looked at the challenges that the ORC faces. So basically now our major challenge is with our system software. It's actually being upgraded. It's being upgraded to contain a larger database. So presently, because the server gets full at short intervals, then they'll have to turn it off for space to be created for it to take more information. So that is being looked at to be upgraded. So ORC is looking at going onto the cloud. When it goes into the cloud, it has a larger space for storing such data. So as part of the recommendations given by the group recommended that the downtime on the registration process should be minimized. And I think it all boils down to the upgrading of the software or dealing with the software system. So if our system issues are resolved, then the time on registration process will be swift for everyone. And also it was recommended that there should be action plan and timelines for resolving these issues that we face. It was also recommended that it's advisable, ORC was advised to deal with the issues in good time, because as we are facing the issues now, it's leading to financial loss, it's breeding corruption, and then it's also giving chance, or it's giving the opportunity for the Goro. We have some people that we've termed as Goro boys. So I think with the system problems, it's giving them the chance to implement their business or go about their business very well. So we also discussed some few introductions that a colleague of us who undertook a study tour, we discussed that one too. So we realized that in other jurisdictions, the process is fully automated, there's no walk-ins, and I think ORC, we plan to implement that. So walk-ins will be at a fee, but then if you just sit at your home or you go to somewhere that you can have access to do the online process, then it will be free for you. So we also realized that you have to do a designed approach so that we can, there'll be an automatic interoperability between the systems of the other agency like the GRA and then the NIA, so that the authentication process or whatever verification process that we intend to do